What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings Podcast studio. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Travis from Comics Limited. How you doing today, Travis?
Pretty good. How you doing, James? Thanks for inviting me, by the way.
Oh, man. Happy to have you on here. Thanks for being on. I can already tell by your background, man. Lots of comic book boxes. I have a feeling it's going to be like Step Brothers. Did we just become best friends? That's awesome, man. That's quite the setup you have there. Now, is this in the area that you usually record and usually do things?
Yeah. This area is my record. This is where I do my recording. It's also my office. I also work here too. And this is
perfect.
And everything, pretty much everything on the top two shelves behind me, which you can't see it all the way around, but it goes around in a kind of a little C-like shape here, and that's all the comics that for sale.
Oh, awesome! So, now, are you mainly on YouTube with your comic sales, or do you get on IG, or you cross multiple different platforms?
Well, primarily, it's actually funny. I was primarily an eBay seller. That was my main place of selling for a really long time. And then I got turned on to Whatnot, and so I jumped on to Whatnot for a while, and it's been okay. I mean, to build a business on Whatnot, you have to work at it. It's one of those things where I don't think anybody tells you, like, you get these aspirations when you get the first meeting when they're talking to you about it, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're rah, Whatnot, wah, wah. Well, the problem is that they don't tell you, before you can really start earning your money, because it takes... Once you get into it, you don't get paid until the item gets to someone's place. Location,
okay.
Right? And eBay has kind of a similar platform when you have to reach a certain goal of sales to get your payouts at a certain
otherwise they hold on to it for a few days or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Well, on eBay, I'm a top seller type thing. They give me, I have all the stuff,
all the perks.
So I literally can take money out the day after a sale happens.
Nice.
And like with Whatnot, you have to get certain goals you have to reach. You either have to sell $100,000 worth of sales, or you have to have 1,000 transactions, as well as you have to meet a certain level of rating. Like you have to have 4.9, a 4.8 or above, a 4.8 rating or above, and you have to have done so many shows. And so I've met all the requirements with the exception of the two major ones, which is either the $100,000 or the 1,000 auctions. I just hit 702 last weekend.
Okay, that's awesome, man.
So I got 300 more to go, and I started pushing my Whatnot show in August. I mean, I know this sounds weird. I'm talking about selling comics right now, just as a thing. But
this is great, man. So, because I haven't had anybody on. You're the first person I've had on that has experience selling on Whatnot, or at least the topic hasn't come up with other people I've had on. I did not realize there were so many different things about it and so many different, requirement thresholds and things that you needed to hit. That really makes sense to where you were like, oh, there's a little bit more to this than than it's chalked up to be here.
Right. And honestly, it was a little daunting. Okay. And so when I first started, like I had started the year prior, I got established. I had a great show. Like my first show I ever did, most people say they'd that it's really small, their first show. My first show was over $600.
Oh, that's great.
It was amazing. But with what made it great was I had one of my close friends, or one of my best friends, Big Me McFly, Brian,
Nice.
Sitting right across from me. We had another guy who we both are friends with that we didn't knew each other at the same time. I've known Brian since I was in junior high.
Oh, very cool.
And so 30 some years.
Yeah.
Or almost 40. And then there's and then he had a friend that I met at the church I go to, and we met and we became fast friends. We were talking about comics and we started talking about things. And then he's like, "Hey, do you know this guy named Brian? He used to have a comic shop." I'm like, "Yeah, I've known him since we were in junior high." It's like, "You've known him? I've known him since I was in junior high." I'm like, and it's because Brian's family took him to two different youth groups when he was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And so he had friends in one youth group and he had friends and we went to junior high and high school together. So So we saw each other. And so we also went to youth group together as well, because his mom wanted him to really get into church.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that she was going to go to church, but she was definitely going to make Brian go to church.
Yep.
And wanted to have him really get there. Anyway, so we met, and so it was all three of us, and it was really fun. We were talking back and forth, talking about comics, and just having our normal, like what you would see like on a podcast that we're on together or something like that, And so we'd pull an issue out, and we're putting it up, and we're starting at $1, and we're like talking it up and talking about what this comic represents and what this story represents, and people were just like, they were eating it up. They were like, buy this. My only bad experience from that particular show, and was kind of the thing that kind of pushed me away from Whatnot for a while, was I had a great sale with a guy. We had everything he got was perfect, but his opinion was nobody does anything perfect their first time. So he gave me a 4.0 for my rating. Which
I had a speech,
my rating for a year.
I had a speech class teacher in college that was his thing. Nobody could get a perfect score. He was so proud of that. He goes, "Nobody's ever gotten 100% in my class, and there's no such thing as a perfect speech. So I'll never give out that perfect grade."
I had a math teacher like that in college. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he was a former retired rocket scientist who was teaching a basic algebra.
Oh man.
And wow, you walk in the classroom, he gets down, he sits everybody down, he's like, okay, he starts talking about math and how much he loves it. And then he talks about his background. And then he says to everybody, "I'm going to grade on a curve and nobody gets an A."
Yeah.
So I got a group of 5 people together who really wanted to study, and we worked so hard to keep the bell curve up. To keep it up, and I ended up with the highest grade in class. I ended up B+ in the class. And,
hey, that's awesome.
And it was, and I had drug a whole group of people with me, and then there was a whole other group of people who didn't want to do that type of stuff, didn't want to get together, that were all on the other side of it. But of course, I was married and had my first kid, and so I was adamantly going for what I was trying to go for and try to get that, try to make it happen. And I wanted to have the best grades I could get out of every class. And so, I mean, I didn't graduate with honors. I mean, so that's a long story, right? So
dude, I feel the same way though with this speech, the speech instructor, the public speaking class. And then he said that it really did make you want to prove him wrong. You're like, I'm going to go all out in this thing and I'm going to get him to give me as close to a perfect score as possible.
Exactly. I mean, and when it's interesting when you're told you can't do things.
Yes.
How often you're like, well, fine, then I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's kind of how that kind of transitions a little bit for me too into art. I mean, so I've been an artist since I was 11.
Okay.
I've been drawing comic book stuff since I was 11, 12. I've been drawing with Brian off and on. I mean, we went to the same high school. He's older than me a couple of years, so he was in commercial art class with this really awesome art teacher who was one of a local legend in watercolor painting around here. I mean, I think she recently, I want to say she passed a few years ago, but she had a gallery in downtown Vancouver right across from the Kiggins that her stuff was in all the time. But she was an amazing artist.
Yeah.
And so she taught this commercial art class, and that my older friends, Brian and Eric, who then were the guys who started the comic shop together, which I got involved with as well back in the 90s.
Nice.
They would leave pieces of artwork on my light table in my other class for me to do stuff with. And then I would leave pieces for them. So we would like, I have a piece of, well, it's funny. I'm working on a piece that for one of the people from Heroes from Heroes that we did a few months ago. Oh, not a few months, a month ago. And,
right.
And it's a piece that Brian drew, and I'm going to ink and color it. And so
very cool.
I started the inking process last week because the guy was like, "Hey, so where's my drawing?" It's like it takes time, man. Sometimes, it's like it would be. I have in my hand, like in front of me right now, and this is only 4 of them, and I have another one. I have sketch covers right here that I'm working on. Right, they're in various stages. This drawing that I showed you earlier that was in the background, that Clone Wars drawing that I'm doing for my daughter that she asked for, plus this drawing, as well as and I was teaching an art class all last fall too. So,
yeah, but people don't realize how time consuming
right.
art
well,
is.
and there's this piece right here behind me. You can see the mouth of that scary clown right there. I did 3 of those for Halloween for a guy who has a haunted house that he's done for the last 20 years in downtown Vancouver. And he found out he was struggling to get some stuff done. He was doing scary clowns, and he had 3 pieces that he needed help with. And I did these 3, basically 4 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot or 4 foot tall scary clowns. I mean, 2 of them were just faces, right? And I got to keep one of them, and that's the one I kept.
All in your spare time, on top of working and selling comics.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, and that's not paint, that's ink.
Yeah,
I inked that. That's a giant ink drawing.
So sounds like you and Brian started collaborating way back when you were in school, and now you're still collaborating. You're going to be inking and working on that. That's so cool.
Yeah, and I'll show that piece tonight while we're
for sure.
We just want to see that stuff. So
yeah, I would love to see that. So you worked at a comic book shop in the 90s as well.
Yeah, I worked at Brian's shop.
That's awesome. How old were you when you were doing that?
Well, so I was in my mid-20s when I started working for Brian. It was about 95, and so they started the shop in 95. Was called Amazing Stories, and it was down on this road called Fourth Plane, and it was down in what's we call it's like it's not really the nice part of town.
Okay.
It's so like there's the heights, and then there's a drop, and then there's a valley called the Fourth Plane. There was Fourth Plane. It was a plane. I mean, that the Army had laid out these 4 different these 5 planes in the Vancouver area.
Okay.
And that's kind of how the name stuck. Like Mill Plane is the plane that had the mill on it, right? Because that was
okay. Yeah, I've seen Mill. I think Mill Plane Road or something down when I've been down there.
Yeah, it's the main drag through all the way through Vancouver. It goes from you can go all the way out to the very edge of the area that would be called Vancouver. There's some farms, and then there was a couple plants like Alcoa Metalworks used to be off of it. It goes, and you can take it all the way out to the end of the peninsula, past Vancouver Lake, almost to Ridgefield. I mean, you can't. It doesn't cross over to Ridgefield because the Lewis River comes right. It's where the Lewis River converges, and the Slough, and then the Columbia River all kind of converge in that spot. And then and then you can take it all the way out to almost Camas now. I mean, when I was a kid, it only went out to 172nd, but then now it goes all the way out to Camas.
Punched it through,
yeah. And
so you're at this shop as a young man, and that's kind of in the time where Image was winding down a little bit, and I think people were starting to experience a little bit of that crash. The comic market crash and everything, all of us that had our 20, issue 1s of something thinking we're going to put ourselves through school.
Right, exactly.
We're getting a little worried at that time. Yeah, that was, I worked at the, comic book shop here in Washington that Todd McFarlane co-owned with his brother-in-law. It was called Spider's Web Cards and Comics. And I always joke because my listeners are going to be totally bored because I always talk about this because it's such a special memory,
right?
Because Todd would come into the shop and hang out and stuff, and the Image guys. But yeah, I remember that time, and just even though Image was kind of not at its peak. It was still such a special time to work in a comic book shop and be around comics. What were some of your fun experiences back then, being a not only part of working at a shop, but working at a shop that your friend runs? That's got to be really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting experience. I mean, because I worked there, and then the shop moved up the street to a little bit nicer place, closer to the college. And then I went back to work there shortly after that, because I left in the later 90s, went off to Eastern Washington University to try to get a degree in art,
Yeah.
of all things.
Yeah.
And then that didn't pan out. So I was like, okay, I come back to town, and I was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I mean, it's funny because I really was, at that moment in time, I really thought, I'm going to go full bore into art. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be an artist. And that's what I was going to do. And so I kind of had that aspiration there, but then also, I also had this work ethic that my dad had instilled in me. Right. And so it was like, I don't want to depend on other people to support me, and I don't want to be a starving artist. That's just, I'm not going to do it. I just can't. And so, I had this other love, which, was kind of crazy. I was really into tech and computers, and things really kicked off for me there. So working at the shop, one of the things that happened there, I'll come back to the tech.
No worries. Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're into a lot of the same things, because I was always big into computers and stuff too. So I'm along for the ride, man. To regale me with these tales.
So one of the best parts of working at the shop was, initially they were working with Batcave to get their diamond order, and that was another local shop. Absolutely despised Batcave. I did. I mean, I don't know about them now. I don't know anything. They're a game store now, and they're nice people, and I have no animosity towards them.
They were the competition back then, though.
In '92, when Wildcats issue number 2 came out, I went in to pick up my books on Wednesday, New Comic Book Day, and they didn't have it wasn't on my shelf. So I'm like, well, hey, what's going on? He's like, well, we were shorted, so you weren't the first person here, and so you didn't get one. And I'm like, are we reordering? Because it was like this really weird thing. The issue 2 came out right as that was kind of like the moment of the sucking in, right? If you remember, it was like 92, 93, the comic market just started to go.
Yep.
And it was like, and so Image, I want to say that at least Jim Lee's studio, Homage, and Top Cow, they saw it coming enough. I mean, Extreme did not, no. but they saw it coming, so they lowered the print runs immediately, right? Yep. So we get the print runs came out, and they errored print run of the newsstand number 2, which was the white cover without the sparkle, right? Which I think was just, hey, we can't afford the sparkle. We're just going to do
I think you're right.
I think that's exactly what happened, because they were such a small studio, and Image was such a new thing.
They're probably like, hey, this book is very late and we can't afford the sparkle thing. Just get it out before people revolt.
So I was a hothead when I was in my early 20s. So I'm like, fine, I'm canceling my shelf right now. You're not getting my business. You're not going to get another cent from me. I walked out, and I went to another comic book store, and I bought the issue off of the rack because they had it. And I think I want to say at the time that was like, wasn't Pegasus. I think it was Things from Another World had just really they had grown so fast. Pegasus in downtown Vancouver, which was owned by the brother of the guy who owns Dark Horse.
Oh, okay.
His name. Yeah. But anyway, they were brothers, and Pegasus was his shop in Vancouver, and he kept it separate from Dark Horse, but he kept his brother's store going. Essentially, is what my understanding. And so I went there and I picked up the book. And then after about a week of being in his shop, I decided that I couldn't go there anymore because he was kind of a jerk. So I went, I literally started going to every shop in Portland. I had a shelf at Future Dreams. I had a shelf at Excalibur. I had a shelf ad. Anyway, so all this happens. And then a couple years later, Brian and Eric say, hey, we're going to start a comic shop. And so I go to work for him. What was really cool is that once the Diamond Order started coming, it was very cool to be the guy who got to put the comics on the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And then also to be the guy going, I'm buying that book today. I'm buying this book today. It's like,
I remember, man.
You're just like, hey, you know what?
That's actually how I started at the comic shop. I was 16 and I would go in there and I would just offer to help put the books out. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, after a few weeks of doing that, Kim Kolomajek, who's Todd's brother-in-law, he goes, hey, you want to work here part-time? Like, yes. And I remember how cool it was getting to see the big cases full of books, and the same thing you're saying, like, oh man, I want to get this one, I want to get that one. And yeah, such a great time.
It's funny, you had Cheddar on a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
I don't know when you talked to him, but I watched the video.
His came out pretty quick. Yeah. So he was on just like probably a couple of days before that one came out.
Okay, cool. So I watched it and I was like, and he started talking about his dad having 2 shops in Portland.
Yes.
Okay, so that's really interesting that he mentions this. Now, we had never had this conversation, but I always noticed because I've bought comics from him. He's bought comics from me. We've traded. We've done a lot of stuff. And so I know what his last name is. Okay. And so I see his last name and I'm like, that name is so familiar. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that name's that same name of the guy who owned a comic shop in Portland. So Brian and I and Eric used to go to Bergeron's Comics in Portland.
Oh yes.
Which is Cheddar's dad.
That's such a small world thing.
He had 2 stores, and we went to both stores, which is really great. Which is funny because he sent me some footage. When I told him, hey, I used to go to your dad's shop all the time. He's like, no way. So he's like, did you remember this? And he sent me this video from the 90s of him camcording walking through the shop, and it literally is a shop I used to go into. He had some really great books in there. I mean, old Valiant stuff from Valiant before it was Jim Shooter Valiant. The old Turok, the old Robot Fighter, and
Magnus,
Magnus, and old Solar, and it was cool to see that stuff. In fact, Brian, for as a kind of a give me, it's in one of my boxes back here actually, on the bottom row, stuff I'm keeping. He gave me a Dr. Solar that he bought from Bertrand's, or at least I think he got it from Bertrand's. He's had it for a long time. I mentioned how much I liked it, and so he gave it to me.
That's cool, man.
But but that was the kind of stuff I remember going through the boxes. I remember buying stuff. And what was interesting is that he helped a guy out in Vancouver in 1990 and 91, or 89, 90, and 91. This guy started a shop called Dreamscape Comics, which was literally on Mill Plain right down the street from my house.
Okay, I remember Dreamscape. Yeah, I remember that name.
So I go in there and I'm talking to the guy and I tell him I'm an artist at high school, and he says, hey, if you want to come hang out and just draw, if you sell anything, I want 10%, but you can just draw here and sell comic book pictures. Anybody who comes in and wants a commission, you can do that, and that'd be cool.
Oh, nice.
And so he let me draw there. I must have drawn probably 20 Punisher pictures because Punisher was so hot at that time. Yep. You had the series was so good, and then Will Spertasio takes over as the artist. Yeah. And so it's this, this great storyline, and Will Spertasio's art is just so perfectly good for it.
It's that, gritty, very gritty. A lot of people don't know Wills did like a lot of horror stuff before that, so he had that really gritty, dark, like perfect style for Punisher.
Yeah, and then him transitioning from Punisher to X Factor, and I had been collecting X Factor because X Factor was one of the very first comics I ever bought.
Nice.
And it was off of a spinner rack at a Minute Mart that still exists here, right off the Mill Plain and 205 freeway.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it's fuzzy there. That's weird. Anyway,
no spinner racks anymore, though.
no spinner racks anymore. But it was, it's like, I think I want to say it was X Factor issue 14. It was great Walter Simonson cover. Master Mold has Cyclops in the grip of his hand, and Cyclops' optic blast is blasting against the cover. The color on the cover is all this pinks and reds and everything reflecting everywhere. And Master Mold's kind of a purplish color. And it's just such it's kind of really powerful. Walt Simonson's one of my favorite artists. I love Walt Simonson. I can't say that I could ever emulate his work, but man,
you have good taste, man.
Yeah, so
he's phenomenal.
Yeah,
you see that piece he's working on right now, that gigantic piece he's been posting on his Instagram the past several weeks.
No, and that's the funny thing is I don't know if I'm following him on Instagram.
Dude, it's insane. He's working on like this gigantic piece, and it's just phenomenal.
Well, I'll have to go look.
You got to check it out because it's it's like he's still got it and then some.
Oh yeah, no, like... I mean one of the coolest things. So you remember the Batman Black and White comics that came out, right? Batman Black and White.
Yes.
He did a backup story in one of the Batman Black and White stories that was just amazing. It was kind of set in the future, and it kind of had still had the feel of the Batman who was in the armor. It wasn't Batman, but it was the one who it was the Azrael.
Yeah.
And so it had that feel to it, but it was very Walter Simonson, and Louise Simonson wrote the story.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is I was planning on going to Terrificon last year with all the guys, right? That was the thing that everybody kind of did together, and I was going to join them for that. And I'm super jelly that they spent, and I just said jelly. Yep.
I'm telling you, dude.
That they got to have breakfast with Walter Simonson every day. I was
more than once.
Yeah. Like they sat down, he came over, they sat down with him and just I mean, I don't know what, I mean, I'm pretty good at not fanboying out too much.
It would be hard to not.
But yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I just I absolutely I adore his work. I love how he talks, especially how he talks about his wife, and I love how she talks about stuff because there was a panel from the year before with Claremont, Walt Simonson, and they said Wheezy.
Yes.
And so Walt had to leave at one point in time in the panel, and so it was just her and Claremont, and they were talking about all the different things and the bullshit and the different editors they had to deal with, and how they had to go around making different choices, and how she kind of influenced a lot of the stuff that Walter was doing because she picked up New Mutants after Walter, and then not Walter but after Claremont, and then she and was writing New Mutants for a long run there, and so it was there was a lot of these.
So much history there. Yeah, I have the Thor. Can't see it on the camera; it's on the top of my shelf. But the IDW artist edition of his Thor run, so amazing. Just looking at those pages and poring over that stuff. Just as an artist, I can't get enough of the artist editions. But the problem is running out of room.
Right, exactly.
I just got a new one today. I just got that colossal Conan one, big Conan artist edition thing that has Barry Windsor Smith, Buscema, like all those guys in there. And I'm like, I have a stack of them on the floor now because I'm running out of room.
Yeah, so if you'll notice behind me, I have that Bad Ink Studios stuff hanging right there. That's because I was thinking about different things I might want to talk about or what we could talk about while we were on this, which I've never planned this stuff very well. So I just try to have stuff. Like one of the things that for this year for me, when it came to comics was the rise of new independents. I thought that was, I think that was a really important thing, whether or not you like the Rippaverse or someone else or anything else. I found that there were some really great independent books that came out this year that were
I've noticed there's more, and I know like they're not small independent, but like the whole Ghost Machine thing really gave me the feel of kind of like the old Image days when they, obviously they're doing it as a imprint under Image, but the fact that you have all these top artists and writers creating a shared universe together, it really brought that spark back alive in me. I'm like, oh man, this feels like when Image got first announced,
Right. Oh, well, and like, or 24/7, doing, like working with Sean Chen and, Daniel, the actor. I have those books right back there too. Cause that was fantastic. I mean, I sold it. I gave away a set as a buyer's giveaway for one of my shows just because I love it so much.
Yeah.
But it's such a great, interesting idea. and the story behind it and how it came about. And Daniel Wu, that's Daniel Wu and Sean Chen.
Okay. Yeah.
And their storyline, this kind of Westworld, but the Westworld natives are AI, so they're alive even when they're not acting. Then they have their own world underneath the city, and that I just thought that was really
just cool seeing people like create comics because they love it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because I feel like nowadays, like, people go into making something with the aspiration that it's going to be picked up as a property for a movie studio or a Netflix series or something. And they're not necessarily doing it because they are truly passionate about comics. Like, the people who are truly passionate about comics are still like regularly drawing comics,
right,
and creating new stuff. So whenever I see people doing stuff like that with the independent works and stuff, it's always really cool to me, because I'm like, oh, those people, they have that. Because I have that. Like, my aspiration was being a professional comic book artist. That's what I wanted to do. That was my dream when I was younger. And life takes different turns and you end up on the path you're meant to be on. But I've still never lost that, that love of creating and wanting to make things and all of that. And I continue to draw and continue to do stuff like the thing I surprised Ryan with and everything on the live stream. And, trying to keep that spark there. And I think people that truly have that, that creative fire in them, it's got to come out. Like, these guys, they're going to do an independent book if they have that idea and they've got it in them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really hard to not do stuff, right? So, I mean, like, when when things didn't work out for me in comics, like I was saying, I was going to school, right? So I left the shop and I stopped doing pizza delivery and things like that, because that's what I was doing. I was trying to go to school, get, and I didn't want to have a giant full-time job. But I mean, the company I was working for, Smokey's Pizza here in Vancouver, it's now Megabyte, is owned by a friend of mine who was one of the managers.
Oh, okay.
And so, I worked for them off and on for like 10 years. And at one point in time, right before I was about ready to leave for school, the owner came up to me and was like, "Hey, I love your drive. I love your commitment to pizza and what we do here. And you're working full time for me. How would you like to manage a store?" And he offered me a store. And I was like, "No, I'm going to school to get my art degree."
Yeah. But he could tell you had that drive and that passion and that commitment to seeing things through. He felt that you were somebody he could, put that responsibility on, which is really cool.
Yeah, and that was a real big boost in my ego. It made me feel like, oh no, I can do this. So I'm going to go to art school. So I go to art school, or I go to school, and I ended up having some incredible art teachers at Eastern. But I also found that the university system in Washington is extremely expensive, and no matter what, even if you're going to the college that your grandmother went to, because my family's been in the Northwest. Well, my family has been in Washington for almost as long as it's been a state.
Yeah.
Long
time.
Yeah. So, and mostly in Eastern Washington, and I had the opportunity to go to Eastern Washington University because it wasn't because they were there, but there was some legacy in the sense that they had gone, my grandmother's whole family had gone there. My great uncle was the guy who sold science teaching certificates for the whole state of Washington.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Up until I want to say 2010.
Okay.
That was the last time was when he finally ended that job. So I had a bunch of family history, and I thought, hey, that'd be cool. Let's go to school where they went to. And then so I looked into the art program. They had a solid art program with some really great art teachers that were Smithsonian artists and things like that. So this was going to be an opportunity for me to expand my art background and grow into whatever kind of artist I was going to be. And I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was my primary focus, an illustrator of some sort. And so I'm going to school there. My teacher they couldn't, there wasn't enough, for some reason, either the teacher or the class wasn't going to happen for the design class. We were all required to take this design class before we got into any other part of the art program. Well, they couldn't provide that class because there either wasn't enough students or the teacher who was going to teach it bowed out. And so the head of the department, who was the Smithsonian artist who had just finished this gigantic exhibit at the Smithsonian where he took a bunch of nails, concrete nails, and made a wall of these nails. And in the wall of nails, he basically created a language with all these nails, letters, and like to create its own language in concrete. Yeah. And it was interesting, and the design is interesting and everything. So he's like, you know what? I'll just teach this block printing class, and this block printing class that I'm going to teach, I'm going to use it as your design credit. And the school was like, okay. So I took a block printing class where I did a bunch. I used all kinds of wood, whatever I could find. I mean, I split my thumb open and I had a big gouge in my thumb that I had to have hazards of that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so I'm carving, I'm doing all this stuff, and I made these great prints. And he was like, you are good. You have the right drive. You need to do this. Well, what also happened while I was there is I had this computer thing going on in myself from way back in high school, right? So I was into computers. I had friends who were going to engineering school. They wanted to become computer engineers and other types of engineering. But so the computer was a huge part of their life. And so we hung out and we would talk. And then I started learning things. And my dad bought me a computer for my graduation. And one of my closest friends was like, hey, you need to get a modem so you can get on our BBS. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And that should date me really big time right there.
Speaking my language, man.
So I get on the BBS and we're playing.
I used to do Doom over, dial up and Doom over the modem and Wolfenstein and all that stuff back in the day. Yeah. We had even before that, we had a Commodore 64 where you would like type in the code and you could make it do stuff. And yeah.
And I would steal games all the time from the store because I had the Commodore 64 and you just make your own copies of it.
That's what we did.
Right, exactly. So it's like I had every game, and then and my dad loved Centipede, so he bought the ball thing.
Oh yeah.
So we had track and field.
The trackball controller,
right. Trackball controller, and then we had the joysticks that were kind of like the ones you would get on Atari, right? The Atari ones. And we would burn through those playing track and field because you're like,
oh yeah, totally, yeah, I remember that.
And it's like, and it would destroy the handle after a while. So we were like burning through.
Yep.
So my dad found a way to get them for really cheap, and so he was able to buy them, have them coming in, even though his job was not stable at the time because he was into construct. He was an aluminum worker, and then the aluminum industry tanked, and so.
Right.
We were either going to move to Okanagan in Washington or we were going to move to Argentina.
Oh, wow.
And that's
a big difference.
He's like, yeah, I'm not taking my family to either of those places.
Yeah.
We're going to stay here. And so he went back to school, did sales, but then ended up back in manufacturing because sales really wasn't, even though the testing said, oh, you'd be a great salesman, Dave. He was good at selling things.
Yeah.
The problem was
the passion for it, right?
Well, he didn't have the passion for it, and he cared more about the people.
Just say it. He was too honest.
Yeah, he was too honest. Exactly. He was too honest. He was like, the guy would be like, yeah, I only really need 10 of these because I only go through like 10.
And he's like, you probably do only need 10 of them, buddy.
Yeah. So here's a box of 100 that costs you $200, right. But you only need 10 out of these. Yeah. You'll never go through them ever again. So it was like my dad was. Always, he tried. He was since he was into cars. He did auto parts. He traveled around to mechanic shops and things like that, and help replace their parts. And it just wasn't his. He loved cars. He loved working on cars. He loved manual labor type things. He enjoyed that. He also loved art. My dad was a fantastic artist. He just never did anything with it because he was told at a young age. That's never going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, not a viable
thing. It's not a viable thing. And so he went to work right after went to work when he got back he was in the Army, became a mechanic in the Army, airplane mechanic during Vietnam, and then we're over in Germany for the second tour. And, and it was basically just the mechanic around the base. And so, and they loved living there. And then they came home and had me, and then my dad went to work in the steel mill and then to the aluminum mill. So, I mean, it was kind of like that. And he got specialized in what he did and actually ended up with a job that didn't get shipped off to around the world. And so when they were bringing people back, he was one of the few people that got to come back to Alcoa before they finally figured out how to get the wire mill out of Vancouver and go. So
right.
He got to come back, and he was one of 10 people, I think, out of like 1,000 people. So,
oh wow.
And so anyway, long story long, that kind of colored my view of what I needed to do work wise. And so I get back to Vancouver from college because I spent all this money and didn't have anything to show for it. I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't want to go back to pizza delivery, although I did immediately have a job and went right back. I'm like, I don't want to do this forever. So I started calling around. I was talking to some, and while I was at college, the other thing happened is a friend, I was talking to a friend who worked in the computer lab, and he's like, we need people desperately, and you have every experience.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never worked on computers. They're like, you've never worked on computers? What happens if you do this on a Windows machine?
You already know.
Blah, blah, blah. He's like,
you just didn't look at it as work.
I know. It was always fun, right? And so so I go in and I have a 5-minute interview, and I'm working the next hour.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. So then I get back in town. I'm like, I wonder if I can parlay this into an actual thing, right? Because there's got to be jobs out there, right, for computer guys. And so I'm asking around. I went to this temp service that I'd worked at before for going and taking this job that I took to earn some money, extra money. They paid whatever I earned while I was working there. They put that in for college. So I got to take that money with me. So it was kind of a scholarship thing, which was really cool. And so and it worked. It was great. It meant that I ended up not having as much debt from going to Eastern.
Yeah.
And then, so I end up taking this test that they say is going to take you an hour to do. I'm done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm done. She goes and looks at it, and she's like, oh, well, we're sending you right now to, they have a meeting over at Stream International in Beaverton. You need to go there now, and they'll set you up, and we'll talk to you. I get over there. I end up going in. I don't even have an interview. They bring me right into this class where Gateway Computers is using Stream as their call. It's a call center. Basically, it's a giant call center company. And so they are like, what their whole thing was, we're training the computer technicians today for tomorrow's world. And so that was what they were doing. And it was a great company to work for. I worked for them for about a year. Went through 3 different jobs. I learned a ton about telecommunications while I was there, because they picked up the US West support contract for their DSL service for online services. So I had all this background of being online because of the BBS, and then having my own internet service forever and figuring out how to finagle that.
Yeah.
By the way, nobody will remember this. Maybe you'll remember this, but Pacifier Online or the small ISPs, they used to have like this 2-hour a day account that you could get. So you could just jump on, get your email, and check some web, right? And it was all Linux stuff at the time, or Unix stuff at the time, because nobody.
Yeah.
And so what nobody really knows, I don't think anybody really knows this, but they didn't have a gate on it, right? So you'd go log in you'd be on for 2 hours. It kicks you off at the end of 2 hours. You log right back on.
Right.
So I was literally online with 2 different modems. I would switch back and forth.
Yeah.
So one would go back and forth. So I had this whole setup to do this. So I knew all these init strings. I had all these different things. And so I went into this job, and I got this job, and that was, for me, the job was, this is going to help me become an artist, because I'll be able to pay for what I'm doing. I'm going to do
Yeah, it was all an ends to a means, right? Like
right.
You had this, it always came back to art.
Right,
like
right.
Whether it was the pizza thing or whether it was the art school or now this, it was all like, okay, now I'm going to get to do my art.
Right, exactly. So I always trying to have those creative outlets on the front of that, right? And so, I worked for Brian after I came back, just kind of once or twice a week, and worked in the shop, and then he needed someone to help close the shop 2 nights a week because he had kid and wanted to have time to be home with the kid, which totally made sense. And I was single at the time, so I did that, and so I closed the store, would close the shop, and do the counting and all that stuff, and I did that for a couple nights a week for him, as well as doing my regular job and doing other stuff. And then I did radio for a while as an outlet for creativity, which got me to this place where this church that I met my wife at, where I then also became art minister. Like I know it sounds a weird title, right?
It sounds cool though. It's got art. So, art is in the title.
So basically, what I did was I led the art ministry at this church for about 3 years, and then as things changed and we got married, I moved on, and we moved on to a different church, and I did the art ministry there. Basically, it consisted of me just taking people who wanted to do something creative and didn't know how to do it, and just letting them do it. Right. And then we would, I had some rules, right? So I had some rules that I set out, like specifically for this thing called Art House that I did. And the whole idea was that, you get people to come, they work on whatever they want to work on in whatever medium they want to work on, but they have to be willing to talk about it at the end.
Oh, okay.
So, because we're going to talk about it, we're going to talk we're going to talk about it, and we're going to critique each other because that's how art is, how we manage art and how we learn and how we become better. Right.
Right.
And so I made sure everybody understood that from the get go. I would have, like, the first art house, I had a live kind of local musician DJ guy come in, and he did music for us. We had always had food. It was at different people's houses. So it was kind of always this moving, flowing thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times it was just acrylic paint and canvases. And, I had a small budget from the church I was at. So that was I would just go buy canvases, and we do stuff and we talk about it. And, I sold my first painting during that time.
That's cool.
I did a painting of downtown Portland circa 1939. Out of this, someone said, "Hey, I have this black and white photograph. Can you make me a giant color painting of it?" And they're like, "How?" I'm like, "How big?" And they're like, "Well, something goes over the fireplace." So it ended up being a 30-inch by 40-inch canvas that I did of this whole scene from downtown Portland. You can see the Orpheum. You can see the Meyer and Frank building still in the background. All this different stuff. It's down Broadway, looking straight down towards the river, and then the hills on the Savi's Island side of the river, because that's
cool.
That's the way you look at it. So I did this huge painting of this, and that was one of my first actual commission pieces that I ever did. And that kind of led to me thinking, hey, I can still do this art thing, right?
Right.
There was a point in time I almost went back to school at the Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland. I think I'm not going to say I dodged a bullet there, but I think I did. Because school doesn't exist anymore as far as I know. And so I'm not sure how the degree and what that would have looked like. But then, it kind of led back into getting this house, becoming a dad, and doing all this art and stuff like that, and just being creative with my wife. And when I married my wife, Kimberly, her dad was into comics. And he had gone and he had sold comics all the way up through the comic boom and bust, right?
Okay.
And so when we got married, there was this huge comic book collection, kind of I'm not going to say it was her dowry, but essentially it became my comic book collection.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was one of the first collections that I resold, because there was so much stuff, so many things. I mean, I'm not even kidding you, man. There were so many great 2000 to mid stuff is really hot today right now, like Red Hulk stuff and Green Lantern stuff and
all the modern keys and stuff.
Everything you could think of. The whole, a couple 3 or 4 runs of the original Wolverine miniseries. All these different things, right? Things that I look back now and go, why didn't I keep some of that for myself, right? But I'm like that. But I think about the time that I sold it and what I sold it for, and the value of what it was at the time, and I'm like, paid for kids' clothes for that year, and for formula for our second kid, and all these different things, because even though I had a good job in tech, the market was still kind of up and down, and I really hadn't hit my stride of where like I am now financially with my my job. I mean, now I'm getting paid what I probably should have been paid 10 years ago.
Right.
And but I mean, it's but it's allotted me this opportunity to come back into this whole thing where a couple of years ago, Brian and I were just hanging out, and we lost touch for a little while, and we kind of got back together, and we were talking. I'm like, hey man, I really want to can we just get together and draw?
Nice.
And he's like, yeah, let's do that. So we did that a couple times, and then he started doing a YouTube channel, and he's like, you need to start a YouTube channel. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's a YouTube channel. What do I really have to say? And he's like, you could do art on it, or you could show, you keep buying all these comics and whatnot in different places. You could show your comic hauls and people would love it. So I really got into shorts really early on when shorts were just new. And so I was doing a lot of,
you were smart, man.
Stuff, right?
In hindsight, like that was the direction YouTube was really wanting to push. So that stuff, especially if you were an initial adopter getting on there and putting out a lot of content on there, they were showing that stuff to a ton of people back then.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was heading up to Emerald City Comic Con, and I had listed a video of some comics that I'd gotten from, I can't remember who it was, the Whatnot channel. The guy's not on Whatnot anymore. I don't see him anymore, but he had this really beat up Carrie Andrews Yoda cover, and he was reading the comic as he was selling comics to people. He was like, let's read a comic today. How about he started reading one comic. He's like, oh, I can't read that on Whatnot. He just tosses it over his shoulder because they were beat up comics, and they were damaged, so he didn't feel like he could sell them. Well, he reads Yoda #1 to all of us, and it's the Carrie Andrews cover, so it's this really cool Yoda cover. And so at the very end of the show, I'm like, dude, can I buy the Yoda? And he's like, well, not really. I mean, it's really beat up. You're not going to do anything with it. Well, can I buy it? Will you sign it? And so
awesome.
He signed the cover. And so that was the last issue I put up in the video, right? I get up to Emerald City, and a buddy of mine's like, hey, I'm going to go to Emerald City, and I don't want to go by myself. Do you want to come with me? And I'm like, sure. So we hop in his car, and I'm driving up there, and we get up there, and we're going through, and I had a few things, like I got my very first commission ever done. I had Terry Dodson do Supergirl
I love
for
Terry's
me.
stuff, man.
Yeah, so every commission I get graded. I have a commission right now that I haven't got graded yet, but I will get it graded here real soon.
I bought a X-Men page from him, like I don't think this year. I think it was last year. Yeah. I was so stoked.
And that run of X-Men is one of my favorite runs of X-Men that anybody's ever done. I mean, I know the writer has some problems, but the original writer who was writing the storyline. But I'll tell you, man, all female team, and yet it felt like X-Men the way X-Men's supposed to be. So it had this feminine side to it that was really good and feminine strong. So when I hear people say that, well, we don't have enough strong women in Marvel, I'm like, are you kidding me?
There's a ton.
I mean,
yeah, and Terry's so good at portraying those characters, just masterful.
Right, and portraying them in a way that is both smart, connects with both the male and the female audience, right? And you feel that way. And I mean that was the first time I really is it Monica St. James that one
so.
that has that her brother and her were from X Factor for Gen
Gen 13, not Gen X, Generation X, yeah,
Generation X, and they have powers that they strain mutant and stuff.
Yep.
So, but I mean, I love that character that she was, because I never really understood her character, because Gen 13 really wasn't my book, although I loved the artist, Bacalo's art is so fantastic. But it didn't draw me in, right? So storyline, characters, what have you. I loved it when it was the Age of Apocalypse version of it. I thought that was pretty cool.
Age of Apocalypse was great. That was some fun stuff.
Yeah. And that was when I was working at the shop with Brian, and Brian, before I went to school, that's when all that came out. I remember all that coming out, and I was like so excited for it. And Brian's like, why aren't you excited for this Kingdom Come thing? And I'm like, because this is so cool. It's X-Men, And, but this Kingdom Come thing, Travis, you got to see this art. You're not going to believe it. So he starts showing me Alex Ross for the first time, and I'm flipping through this, and I'm like, this is all painted stuff. And he's like, this is a Travis comic book. You need to have it. And I'm like, he's selling me hard. I work at the shop. I'm going to get the book for free. It's not like I'm going to be paying for it, but he's selling me hard on it. And, because way back in high school, there was this Havoc Wolverine storyline.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
All watercolor painted art, right?
Yeah, the whole thing. Beautiful stuff.
I loved it. It was like one of my favorite books of all time. Like, I talked about it all the time when we were kids. And so Brian, immediately, no matter what, if an image from that comes up anywhere, he's like, oh, look, Travis art right there. That's Travis art. Travis loves that art. That's his stuff. And so it's kind of a go-to funny thing that
Speaking of Travis and art, I got all this art talk. I need to see some of your art, man. Is there some stuff you'd be willing to show on here for everybody to see?
Absolutely. And in fact, I'll bring up
You've got like a fancy camera setup. I think you can make it like split screen or something here.
I can.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
The mastery of OBS.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So this piece right here is one I'm working on for my daughter. It's a Clone Wars cover.
Oh,
you kind of see I'm doing the 501st issue. And it's three of her favorite characters, and now my brain just went blank and I cannot think of any of their names, but it's the main guy from the 501st, the leader, Captain Rex. And then two of the other, one of them I think is supposed to be Cody, and one of them is supposed to be one of the other guys.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what she asked me for. And so what I decided to do, and if you can kind of see by the positioning, can you imagine a Captain America, Black Widow, and a Wolverine?
Yep.
X-Men 268.
Jim Lee cover. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
totally.
that's where I was going with that.
Nice,
and so that was,
nice homage. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of show some stuff in kind of various stages. So I'm working on, I have a group of sketch covers that I'm working on right now.
Oh, cool. I love sketch covers.
And this one, these first two are actually, three of them are actually for one person. For
cool.
Richard Westfall. I don't know if you've met or heard of Richard Westfall.
Richard was on the Christmas stream with Ryan, right?
Yeah. He's one of our. He's kind of our go-to admin guy.
I think he was on Big B's stream and everything. Yeah.
He's been live with me a couple times.
I'm familiar. I meant to reach out to see if he wanted to come on here, so I might have to have you put in a good word for me if you enjoy your time on here. Get him on here.
I don't know. I'm kind of bored. I'm just kidding.
That's so boring. I know.
So this first
talking about all the things that we love is so boring.
I know, it's terrible. So he asked for very specific things when we were talking about stuff, right? And so the first one he asked for was the Avengers locker room. Not with the Avengers in it, just with their costumes in lockers.
Right.
And so I was imagining, so I had been watching show on Apple TV about the soccer guy. Can't think of his name.
Ted Lasso?
Ted Lasso. And so I was imagining their locker room.
Yep.
When I was doing that. So you can kind of get an idea. Plus then I started looking up college locker rooms. College football locker rooms and all the different lighting and different
things.
Getting all
your reference
just trying to
material,
get an ideas in my head what it looked like. Because I was like, how do I do this? Because I'm not super into sports, so that's not my.
This is the thing about comics, man. We have to figure out how to draw anything that's asked of us.
Right. So this and I think I'm going to try to.
Oh, dude, that turned out great.
Yo, this is still, and I'm not even done with this one.
It's already looking great.
So, yeah, so I got Black Widow, Captain America, Thor, Scarlet Witch, and Iron Man.
Nice.
And so, and I had added the shield, the shield. You can kind of see it's sitting up on the top shelf.
I love how the hammer down there. Yep.
And then I'm kind of going with a little bit of I'm not going to put any more trade dress on this side. I'm going to put some trade dress on the back, but I wanted to do the little Captain America.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Face on there. I thought that would be kind of cool to do.
Yep. No, that's awesome, dude.
This one might be a little bit harder to see. He asked me for the Red Lantern cat. And I didn't know there was a Red Lantern cat character, alien cat. So this one is about, this is where I've done the wash on the cover. So like I did a blue wash on that cover after I penciled everything in.
So you doing watercolor?
No, actually this is all ink.
It's all ink. Okay.
That's all ink. So I do watercolor occasionally with stuff.
What kind of ink are you using?
I have some.
Yeah. I'd like to see.
So I use these drawing inks.
Okay.
They seem to be the best waterproof.
The only name of drawing ink I remember from way back in the day was people would get the Doc Martin. Wasn't it that Doc Martin made some kind of colored inks or something that people would use?
I have some Doc Martin white. Yeah, it's one of the best whites out there. And then I have a bottle of the same company's it's called, the company's called it's hard to read on the bottles because they're so small.
I'm telling you, dude, after 45, my close-up vision started going, so I feel you on that.
Yeah. So what I do is I tend to wash the cover sometimes with the color, depending on what I'm doing. So you'll see that in one of my more recent videos I put out that I did a cover, a Turtles cover.
Yes.
And the Turtles cover, which I don't have now because it's in the hands of the guy who got it.
Yep.
That one I didn't. I actually did it afterwards. I painted the whole cover with the white ink.
Okay.
Because I didn't like it. Felt a little dingy, even though I had cleared all the eraser off of it. I felt like it needed something more to make it more pop.
Mm-hmm.
And make the character, because I was originally going to do an alleyway scene, and then it was like I was talking to my daughter, and she's like, "Yeah, I think it would be too much." Because you got 5 characters on there: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man, which, by the way, they've never been together. So
sometimes it's about what you leave out versus what you put in, right?
Exactly. That is exactly what.
Which is hard though, because a lot of times we want to put everything in, and it's hard to pull back and actually, realize that you need to leave a little bit of room for it to breathe.
Right. And I think that's what's going on with the Black Widow one. I'm still working. I'm still not quite comfortable with her suit on there.
Right.
I feel like it needs a little more, and I feel like there's I don't know if I like the blue walls. I think I'm going to change the walls to something else. Maybe try to come up with kind of a taupe or something that would be more wall-like. The light on the ceiling, so that was actually inspired by a college football team's locker room I saw that had this big light, on the ceiling, and it had their symbol their symbol on it. Like I want to say with some animal head, almost like the Cougars, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And it shining down, you see the symbol down on the floor as well. So that's kind of what I was doing.
That's a great idea.
So this.
Oh, and I got to tell everybody who's listening to the audio version, this is why I always recommend looking at the YouTube version, man. He's showing all sorts of cool stuff on here, so make sure to switch over to YouTube at this part of the podcast. Oh, and he's even able to zoom in. Look at this guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna zoom in.
So fancy. All right.
There we go. So now we can see it better. We
can really see it. Yeah.
So this is the Red Lantern cat, and you can see it's still kind of in a very basic stage. You can see I'm already changing the letters on the.
You're just blocking everything in and getting an idea for the overall color palette and everything.
Right, and I thought purple was a great way to do space because you can go darker, and that's kind of what I did with the. So I have one book that's been great, and that book was this Silver Surfer book that I did for Dave. 35 cent comics.
Oh, okay.
And so his was in Silver Surfer versus Galactus, and it was just big giant Galactus head with Silver Surfer shooting him in the face. And so if you want to check out my channel, it's on my channel, it's on my Instagram, but it shows the graded book and everything. And
that's right, you're a CGC certified artist, right?
I did. Yes.
That's amazing, man.
So
very cool.
It sounds really cool, and I kind of want to keep the coolness of it, but it's not coolness.
Really.
But it's not as hard to. It's not as hard to get.
Don't let the cat out of the bag. Pun intended. There he is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really see it, but there's a tail that's kind of going up here in the background, and then that'll all be blued in, and you can see that I'm wiping out the Green Lantern title and just changing it to Red Lantern because it was a Green Lantern. There aren't any Red Lantern sketch covers. So
what kind of challenges are you finding? Because the paper on those sketch covers, a lot of times it's kind of is not the greatest paper for all different mediums, but it's kind of like if people don't know these sketch cover comics they sell, it's almost like a, what would you call it? Like not quite like poster board, but I mean, it's pretty heavy duty.
It's a light Bristol.
Yeah.
And which is good for ink, but watercolor is
that's what I was going to ask you. You find challenges with this because you are going in there with the ink and everything.
Here, this one was a really hard find for the comic itself. I'm going to go ahead and take it out. And unfortunately, this one has a dented corner. I was a little bummed about it, but maybe that's why the guy only sold it for $4.
It could be, yeah.
So, that's a bummer about it. I might try to see if I can find another one, but you can kind of see, you can see once I take it out of the bag that it's going to move.
Yep.
And that's kind of the expected thing. If you're doing a full color cover, with CGC, they expect it to move. Mm-hmm. What they want you to do is keep because they don't grade it. They don't grade the outside cover, the sketch cover. They grade by the inside cover. Yeah. And so that's why I'm a little bummed that this one got damaged.
Right.
Because that, if it wouldn't have been this would be a 98 book. So
yeah,
I'm probably, I'm going to finish this one, but I may do it again.
Yeah.
Which I've done before, like one of the very first pieces. So it kind of led into doing this. I'm going to show some more there for you in a minute, moment. But what kind of led into doing this was, so a few almost 2 years ago, Brian was like, "Hey, you need to do a YouTube channel." I'm like, "Okay," and then he's like, "Hey, let's do this thing where we shout other people's channels out, and then we'll do a giveaway after so many months where other people are doing this big bees shout out channels." And so he does this. We do this shout out challenge, and it's fantastic. Great numbers. I mean, I got 200 subscribers from that.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
I mean, I'm only at 355 right now.
Still.
But in my first year, I had my first 200 subscribers before the end of the year.
That's awesome.
In fact, I had 220 by the end of that year. We did 5 months of it. So I did 5 11 by 17 full color drawings.
Yeah.
And that was how I kind of got back into this. And
nice.
So the very first one I did was for, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He has a channel. He lives in Las Vegas, and Romuel. Anyway, he has a shop where he does postage, and he sells his comics at it. And he's a really great guy. He's
I think I know who you're talking about.
His wife passed away from some sort of aneurysm. Then he got sick,
right,
and got healthy. And so anyway, he was the first one to win. Right, first one to win the challenge. And winning that challenge, he was like, my favorite 3 characters are Silver Surfer, Daredevil, and the Hulk. Well, if you know, Daredevil, the Hulk, and Silver Surfer have all been Defenders at one point in time in the Marvel universe, but never together. Yeah. The Silver Surfer and the Hulk, yes. The Hulk and Daredevil, yes, but never
all three.
Never all three. So I basically did this drawing, and if you go dig through my channel or even dig through my stuff, there's one of the drawing, you should see it there. I did two. Like I did the first one, I did watercolor, and that was because that was what I had experience with. And I didn't like it. It just didn't look right. The paper didn't hold up right. It didn't have the right feel to it.
Right.
And I didn't like the Hulk didn't look right. I had the perspective wrong. And this was the first time I've drawn characters for someone in probably, I'm going to say probably 10, 15 years. Now I'd drawn and been drawing in my own sketchbooks, but I hadn't done anything for any other person. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I can do better. So Brian and I sat down, we were drawing, and I'm like, hey, can you show me what you would do with this hand? Show me this. I have that drawing. I don't have it with me over here, but I have that drawing that Brian did up on. And then I went back and I redrew the whole, I put the one drawing on my drawing board, and I put my another drawing on my drawing board on the next to it, and I had it up on my easel. And then I just basically freehanded the whole thing, a whole new version of the whole thing. And it turned out so much better. And it was the forced perspective of the hand, the same size as the Hulk's head, and all that stuff, and the fist all the way back here. And it was just, it was great. And the Silver Surfer blasting across, and then Daredevil swinging in from above. It was just, and throwing one of his batons and the rope twisting around and kind of,
so it all came together in that,
it looked
that version.
So good. And I was like, okay. And I gave him both to him. I got to have both of them. So he was the first
one.
I'm
I'm sure he loved both of them because us as artists, we are the biggest critics of our own work.
We definitely are. So my most recent commission, other than the one that I did for the Christmas thing, was a guy during the Heroes for Heroes bought a sketch cover from me, and he asked me to do Spider-Gwen, but he wants a homage to Amazing Spider-Man 300.
Oh, nice.
And so this is just in the sketch phase. So there's no ink on this one, and I'm redoing the trade dress on it and everything. But this is me homaging that. I literally went in and I measured out, and I freehanded the circle, but I measured out the distance. You can see my lines through the.
Yep.
I measured out the diameter of the circle and how and all the stuff and how much, and then the space between the two. And
you nailed the pose too.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun. I mean, I have a facsimile 300 right over here that I was using for that to do it. So that's kind of that one's going to be that's actually next on the docket to go to ink. I'm probably going to do a little more detail before I do that, but that's next on the docket to go to ink. And then this one, you barely can see it, but this is the rough. This is where it all starts. This is going to be Richard wanted you can't even see it.
I can slightly see it.
Right. So this is a Thanos glove. So we were we were on the stream, and Richard was like, can you do Thanos's glove? Because he saw this one done by someone else for the stream, for the show. Right. And he's like, I gotta have that. And I'm like, and he couldn't, and it was too much. It went way high, like $300. And he was like, yeah, I can't do that. Can you do one for me, Travis? And I'm like, sure. So I'm like, I paid $40 for it. So I'm gonna do a Thanos glove. I'm like, hey, I got a Silver Surfer black cover. Would that work? He's like, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Perfect.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool, man.
So those are the sketch covers I'm working on. I'm dropping my art. It's just falling down.
That's awesome, man. You got maybe one or two other things you can show before we start wrapping things up?
Yeah. I'm going to show you this. So here's the piece that Brian did.
Oh, cool.
Or the one for the guy. And this is the pencil sketch of Brian's pencil sketch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Zoom it out. Oh, too much. Oh, it's not going to let me zoom back in now. Darn. Oh, there it goes. If I can get it to do it.
Is that the one he did? He did one for Mon Comics, right?
Right, he did one for Mon. This isn't the one for Mon.
Different one, yeah.
This is a different one. That he did this live at on the Heroes for Heroes stream.
Oh yeah.
So he was drawing this, and the guy people were bidding back and forth, and then it stalled out right around $60. And I'm like, you know what? If we get this over 100, I'll ink it and color it.
Nice.
And so it went to 150. So it was really
Very
great because
cool.
we're raising money for veterans.
Yeah, totally.
I'm wanting more money to go out. So this is how this is going. So
Yeah.
this is my first pass at doing the inks. You always grab one part of the drawing that you feel like is the easiest piece to do, something to knock out quickly. Of course, what I did is I didn't want to draw right. We wanted to give the original pencils to the person. So
yeah,
I fixed my light table was broken. So I fixed my light table, and then I did pencils of Brian of that with in behind it, so I could capture exactly what he had done on it.
perfect.
So I captured
Got the
that,
costume in there.
and then I started doing the inking on X23. So
Very cool.
yeah. So that's kind of the most recent thing I've been working on.
Yeah, that looks like a fun one.
So, and that's on Bristol, and and it's a heavier Bristol. So that one I could use some watercolor on it, which I will. I might use some water on it. And I switch things up. I've been as I talk to other artists and I'm learning different things about how they do stuff. Like it over here on my table right now, I brought in all my art supplies because I wasn't sure if I was going to do some live art or anything.
Right.
You never know.
So here's the thing. I definitely want to have you on again. Okay. So I think it'd be cool if we did something where we were both on, maybe doing some drawing or something. I think that would be really fun.
You know what? Next time Brian and I are going to do an art stream, I will we'll pull you in.
Oh, I would love that.
And now it usually happens like we don't usually plan those, so they just happen. We had Absolute Dracula on with us on the last time.
Oh, cool!
And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely hit me up if you're going to do another one. If it works out, I would love to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got that. That was I finished the sketching on this because this piece, and then I have a Captain America piece that's going to him as well. The same guy. It was from the stream. It's actually the reverse image that was on the art stream that we did.
Oh, okay.
So this is what I did, and then I reversed it in Photoshop. So that's actually a negative image, and then I signed it in red, white, and blue. So,
I like how very subtle.
Yeah, and when you see the black and white image, if you go and I don't know if you see my stream because I think I sent it to someone else, but if you look for the art stream for Heroes, which was on YouTube, you can see this has been reversed and it's black and white. It's a black image with the white.
Okay.
White, and so that's why it's the black.
I like your signature too.
Yeah, that was. I asked the guy. I'm like, hey, so how do you want me to sign it? Do you want to sign it in? Do you want it black and white, or do you want ink? Do you want red, white, and blue? He's like, do red, white, and blue. That'll be so cool. It's going to the same guy that other drawing's going to. So
awesome, man. Well, I could keep you on here for like 3 hours, but I want to make sure to give some time to be able to have you back on and have more things that we can chat about. And
absolutely.
I want to make sure to give you some time here at the end to let everybody know where the best places to find you are on YouTube, Instagram. I mean, it seems like every day we're having to hop on some kind of new platform to peddle our wares.
Right, totally.
So the stage is yours. Let everybody know where they can subscribe, where they can follow, and all that good stuff.
So on Instagram, if you want to find me on Instagram, it's comics_limited on Instagram.
Nice.
At YouTube, it's Comics Limited, and I think it's like 730 or something like that. I never went in and changed it to.
Gotcha.
Because I know you can change that.
Yeah, you can get like the custom link or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's comics. If you just search Comics Limited, you'll see my little shield symbol, right?
Oh, you got stickers.
Yeah, I'm a part of the sticker people. Don't let Sticky Goose know.
I'm gonna be getting some stickers here soon.
So you can find me Comics Limited on YouTube. I have a website. It is comicslimited.com.
Perfect.
But I don't do much on there other than you'll see what I'm selling from right now. Pretty much the only thing that's on there is what's on my eBay.
Does that have all the links for your social media and your YouTube as well?
You ask me that, and I go, you know what? I was writing my about page, and I still have.
I was gonna say, man, that can be like the one-stop hub for people. We just say, go to the website. You can find me on everywhere.
Yeah, that would be the easiest thing to do. Well, so now after this show,
you're gonna do it
on my about page. We'll have all my social, all those things.
There you go.
You can find me on eBay as Comics Limited on eBay as well. So Comics Limited, remember Comics Limited? That's me.
Totally. We're not going to be able to forget, man.
However, on Whatnot, I'm not Comics Limited. Although you see the symbol, I'm Travvic1138.
Okay.
Because I started that before I picked up the name Comics Limited.
Yeah. And so I'm going to make sure to put all these links in the show description for everybody as well, so they'll be able to easily get there and find you and like, follow, subscribe, share, all the good stuff that we always encourage people to do. Any other places, any other resources? I know we can see you on a lot of other people's channels hanging out and everything, which is really cool. It's such a special community. And obviously you being friends with Brian, we keep calling him Brian, but Big B McFly, if anybody wants to look him up on YouTube and Instagram as well. I know you're on there with him quite a bit too, aren't you?
Yeah, he and I, well, I mean, of course, he doesn't live that far. He lives about 2/3 of the way from you down towards me.
Okay.
So I go up and I try to hang out with him like once every other week. It's been a little bit of struggle this holiday season, so that's been kind of rough. But I was supposed to be actually there for the Christmas stream last weekend. So
okay.
But I was doing a Dollar Train thing on Whatnot with that I got invited to do, which was a lot of fun. And it was a good exposure. I mean, I gained probably, I think I hit 1,000 followers on one.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, which is great. But if you ever want to find me on Whatnot, every Thursday morning around 7 a.m. Pacific time, I have a stream that I do on that called Comics and Coffee with Comics Limited.
Oh, very cool. I'm going to have to check that out on the off chance I'm up that early. I'm so much of a night owl. It's hard for me to, like 8:30 is getting up early for me.
Well, yeah, and that's my bedtime because I work nights. So
there you go.
So I get off work on Thursday mornings, and last Thursday I was so tired. But someone had said, "Hey, the trailer's coming out for Superman." So I'm like, I should capitalize on that. I'm gonna get 20 Superman books ready for tomorrow, and so I did that on Wednesday, and so I had like 25 Superman books, which ended up being great. I had a guy who bought a good fair share of all that stuff.
I'm sure that stuff is going. All the Frank Quietly stuff has to be popping off now.
I'm sure it is. I in fact don't have any of that, but I had a bunch of other really great Superman stuff. Like Death Superman stuff, Return of Superman. I had this. So what I do is I try to give a big book away. Try to give something big away. Yeah. Just as incentive for people to be in the room to buy, right? And so I want to make sure that it's worth their time if they're buying, because I'm not charging a lot for my books, but I want to I need to get as many transactions as I can when I get to this 1,000 point, which allows me to then be able to do more. But I try to give away something. I have something that's at least worth $50 to start off with as a giveaway, as a buyer's giveaway.
Yeah.
Well, so this week it was a 6 or 5 times signed Return of Superman.
Oh, sweet.
And it wasn't graded because because it was polybagged, and they signed it on the polybag.
Oh, they signed on the bag.
And Jurgens and all the different, and Gamil and all the different artists and writers. Everybody was doing Superman at the time signed it. Kessel's on there, all those different. And so you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then whatever reason, my giveaway didnlike work right. And it was for everybody. And it was like, oh my gosh. And some guy comes in and he wins it. And he's like, I'm like, well, that's weird. You didn't buy anything. How did you win? He's like, I'm so sorry. It was a buyer's giveaway. I didn't mean to let me buy something. I feel so bad.
Yeah.
So he ended up giving me back, not saying I'm not going to take it. I was able to run the buyer's giveaway as a buyer. I was able to run the giveaway and only had buyers in it. And so what I did is he wanted some ASM stuff, so and we were talking about it, and I said, you know what, for your generosity for giving that back, because you have to get something
Yeah.
for you want, I'm going to send you these 6 ASM books that you wanted. And so
Oh, that's awesome,
I
man.
sent those off to him as a freebie to him. So I
Very
try to be
cool.
as generous as possible on the stream, because I feel like it's more about connecting with people and being generous and getting them involved in comics.
I think so, yeah.
Than it is about me making a bunch of money off of it. More
Yep.
so, I want to buy and curate books for me, because everybody who buys from me, they also get free things from me too. I always add a couple books to their order, no matter what, right? You buy one book for me, let's say, like on the dollar. I'm still talking, and we're trying to get to an ad there.
No, you're good.
So the Dollar Train thing, people were buying dollar books, and so the people who bought $1, I said anybody who buys over $1, spends over $1 on the stream, will get an extra book in their package. And so every book that I sold for $2.
I was going to say, speaking of free books, from Bigby's thing, like a week ago, I got on there and he was doing a thing for, anybody that bought a membership through his YouTube channel. And then Son of Crom and another guy, What's on the Comic Rack, were on there. And they're like, yeah, anybody who does this, we're going to send them free comics. And Son of Crom hand delivered my comics, because he lives real close to me.
Right.
So he literally left them on my front porch this morning. So I had a visit by the Son of Crom. I'll have to look on my Ring camera. He came so early.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Just such a cool community, like you're talking about, like giving back and giving free stuff. I just thought that was so cool.
Well, and I think I gave away a sketch cover on that show because I wanted Brian to get. I want people to sign up, so I gave a sketch cover away. I just got the book, the cover that I'm going to do it on. It's a new one, a DC All In, but the guy wanted Commandi, and I was like, because he was like talking about, I love Commandi. I'm like so into Jack Kirby right now, and he was like, and so I'm super excited to do that. And I found one that it was just the really hint of the DC logo on it, and so I'm going to do the cover on that, and because there is no Commandi blank sketch cover, so that way I can replicate the Commandi trade dress. I can do all the fun stuff with it. And then have the character, and I'm really looking forward to doing it. I'm gonna kind of try to build it off of some of my own knowledge of the Commandi character. I mean, I spent 135 days doing Jack Kirby's Black Book sketchbook.
Oh, cool.
Where I did these shorts every day, or tried to do one every day. I didn't do it every day, but it's called the Black Magic Edition sketch. I'm looking at it. It's right down here on my desk. And it basically has all these artists who inked the sketchbook of Jack Kirby's. Jack Kirby got all these people together. It's right before he died, and they all came in and did covers and told stories. And there's some information about the character, or some history type stuff. Like there's a guy who was an editor who wrote all the kind of history type things. And then there's artist comments, and then there's comments by Jack Kirby in it too, which are,
oh man, I'm gonna have to find this book.
Yeah, it's hard to find, and right now I think the last time I saw it here, let me show it to you.
I'll find it, and I'll probably pay way too much for it.
Well, don't pay too much for it. I mean, I think I saw it, the last time I saw it was 110 for an unopened, the polybag. I mean, it's a pretty thick book too.
Very cool.
And that's and it's, I mean, and I literally went through it, and I would open it, and I'd read through it first and get what I was reading in my mind, so that I could read it out loud. And I'd open it, and it'd show the image on one side, like.
Yeah, I was gonna say you gotta show me something there.
There we go. I just random page, Puppet Master, right? And that was inked by Peter Cooper. And so I would read the copy on the other side of the page. The copy on here, like, so for Desaad, there's some copy there, right?
Okay.
And I would just read the copy as part of this.
And you just did that for some YouTube shorts.
Yeah, I mean, they were
awesome.
On my channel, there is a what are they called when you group them together? Is one
playlist.
So there's a playlist of all those in there, and I'm going through and re-editing them, so they not re-editing them, but editing the title and making sure they have the exact same title, because it changed a little bit over time, because as I got to know how to do YouTube better, I improved, and so I was changing things. Like I was using vidIQ to help kind of find the best times and things like that to do stuff, and
awesome, Travis,
all that stuff. So
listen, brother, I appreciate you being on here. I could talk to you forever. I'm going to have you back on. I'm going to hold you to it. And I hope to be on one of those drawing streams with you.
Yes.
Hang out with me here for a moment while I tell everybody what to do. I get bossy, tell them to like and subscribe, and go check us out on youtube.com/@Nerdy for the video version, especially when we have artist guests like Travis. We always have cool stuff that is getting shown off, so I always recommend checking out the YouTube version. Audio version can be found on any major audio podcast platform. And in the meantime, everybody, I'm going to hit this outro. Travis, keep it nerdy, brother.